Part 1. You hear a conversation about recycling and garbage collection services. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, I recently moved into a new house in Avondale and I'm trying to get a handle on the garbage collection and recycling services. Could you help me with that?
Certainly. We've recently adjusted our schedule to better meet community needs. While our collection in Avondale used to be on Thursdays, we've shifted to Tuesdays due to popular demand. We recommend setting out your garbage at the designated collection sites the night before to ensure timely pickup.
That's helpful, thanks. What time should I expect the collection truck on that date?
Our trucks are scheduled to arrive and begin collection at 8:15 a.m. This timing helps avoid the rush hour, usually between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., and ensures that the roads are less congested.
That sounds well planned. I have an old TV that I need to dispose of. Do you recycle electronics?
Currently, we do not have the facilities to safely recycle electronic appliances like TVs. These items require special handling due to their components and materials. I recommend checking with local electronic stores or municipal waste facilities. They often offer electronics recycling programs.
Okay, I understand. Do you offer door-to-door garbage collection services?
Unfortunately, due to our current staffing challenges, we cannot provide door-to-door service. However, all major garbage collection sites are clearly marked on the map available on our website. This should help you locate the nearest disposal point conveniently.
Got it. Are there specific preparations we should make with our recycling to assist in the process?
Yes, actually. We highly recommend using the special waste sorting bags that are available for purchase at local grocery stores. These bags are designed to keep different types of recyclable materials separated, which greatly facilitates the recycling process at our facilities.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
That's a great initiative. What more can families do to improve the recycling process at home?
One of the most effective things families can do is to start by properly sorting their rubbish into categories such as plastics, metals, paper, and organics. This not only helps in reducing the contamination of recyclables, but also improves the efficiency of the recycling process.
That makes sense. For recyclables like cans, bottles and glass, are there specific preparations we should follow?
Absolutely. Please ensure to remove any labels and rinse the bottles and cans before placing them in the recycling bin. This reduces contamination and the cost of recycling, and it ensures that more materials can be successfully reclaimed and reused.
Should I empty juice bottles that still contain liquids?
Yes, please empty any containers of their contents before disposal. Liquids can damage the recyclable materials and may complicate the recycling process. Ensuring containers are empty also helps in reducing the weight of the recyclables, which lowers transportation costs.
And how should I handle paper products like pizza boxes?
Paper products can often be recycled, but please make sure they are free from food residue. Food contamination can render paper products non-recyclable, as it often leads to mold, which complicates the pulping process. Additionally, regarding egg cartons and similar items, please separate them from other paper recyclables because they are made from different materials that need to be processed separately.
That's very informative. Thank you for all your guidance. I'll definitely follow these instructions to help make the recycling process more effective.
You're very welcome.
That's the end of Part 1.
Part
You
2.
now have half a
You'll hear
minute to
an
check
HR
HR representative of Earn and Learn giving some information about her company. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Welcome to all of you. Can everybody see and hear me? Good. I'm Sarah Connor, an HR representative of Earn and Learn. I have been asked today to talk to you about our company. So for those of you who don't know very much about the company, let me start by giving you some basic information about it. Earn and Learn started nearly 20 years ago. It is not a charity but a for-profit company that enables promising entrepreneurs to make money while traveling. During the past 10 years, it has grown rapidly and has gained great influence in most countries of the world. We have a partnership with the school and take a large number of recent graduates from the business school. So if you are a recent graduate, I'd say you can consider applying to our company. Before your application, you might be curious about what sort of places you could go to. There are 4 main locations, but you also have the freedom to submit a different location, and if they can make the necessary arrangements, you can go. The first country, Earn and Learn. And Learn established locations was the US, where you may choose from multiple locations as long as you can commit to their more rigid schedule of August to December. Also, you could do the Australia internship. That one is really cool. You work at a wildlife shelter and learn about the business practices of nonprofit organizations. You do have to be willing to commit 8 months for that one, though. Perhaps that's a long time to be so far away, but I would say it is really an amazing opportunity. I don't know whether some of you are in decent physical shape. If so, the South Africa internship is another exciting one. You learn a lot about sustainable farming, but you would be doing some of the manual labor involved in maintaining a farm. Indeed, it's hard work, but I think you would definitely be able to do it. It may be wise to wait until after their summer is over, so it's not so terribly hot. In addition, there is a most recently established location in India. This one gives you more of a study abroad feel, given that they arrange a host family for you to stay with. In the other locations, you live in an apartment with other interns, so this is definitely a unique experience.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Regardless of where you go, at the end of the program, you get a global traveling certificate as long as you can explain your experience. You can provide a written log of what you did. I recommend writing journal or blog entries about what you do every day or a weekly summary of each day. Of course, you don't have to write up a formal report or anything like that, and you need to apply for it once you prepare to return. Some students may want to know whether this is a paid internship. Actually, you have to pay for the flight there yourself, but you have the opportunity to create your own small business, which could earn you money if it's successful, so basically, you pay for it all up front. But when you're there, you can find ways to make money. That is to say, you pay for 2/3 of the cost up front as a deposit and then give the final installment 1 month prior to your return. Finally, I have to remind you that you need a health check before you go to make sure you're not going to spread any communicable diseases. In addition, before you go, you don't have to attend any meetings or workshops. You'll meet everyone you'll be working with once you get there. Okay, well, that's all I've time for today. Thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So, following on from our tutorial on European agriculture last week, Daisy and Eric are going to talk about the most commonly grown crop in Asia, which is, of course, rice. Eric, can you tell us what you've been working on?
Yes, sure. We've been looking at the role of rice in a number of countries, how it's grown, ways of increasing production. As I'm sure you know, rice is the staple diet throughout Asia, and, in fact, 90% of the world's rice is grown and eaten there. Daisy's got some background on that.
Well, rice was originally a wild plant which started out in the tropical regions of Asia. But there are literally hundreds of varieties today, and each with different qualities. For instance, one will survive floods, while another will grow in relatively dry conditions. A third has a really lovely smell. But wherever it grows, rice needs a lot of water.
What do you mean by a lot?
Well, it takes about 5,000 litres to get a kilogram of rice. This can be supplied either naturally or by irrigation. And as most rice-growing countries suffer from unpredictable weather, including drought, water management really is the key.
Research has become so important now that each rice-growing country in Asia has its own research institute. Whether we're talking about Japan, China or Bangladesh, and they're all coordinated by a group in the Philippines called the International Rice Research Institute.
Interesting.
Bangladesh, for instance, has been successfully using different rice varieties and fertilizers for 30 years. But because it's such a flat delta country, it's very difficult for the water to drain away after the monsoon season, so they need to find special rice crops that can survive the floods. And with global warming, the situation is more urgent than ever.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Now I'd like to move on to our comparative study. As you can imagine, China is the world's biggest rice-producing country. Collectively, the Chinese people probably eat more than 3 billion bowls of rice every day.
Quite a statistic.
And of course, rice plays an important cultural role too.
We then compared China to Thailand. You know, even though Thailand only has about 64 million people, it's the world's #1 exporter of rice. Not China, as you might imagine.
Is that so?
Yes, they send their rice everywhere, in particular to Europe, as well as Africa and the Middle East. Apparently, the fact that jasmine rice is growing in popularity is one reason why Thailand's rice export industry is doing so well. People want something a bit different.
And of course Thailand is well suited to rice growing. Good climatic conditions and lots of fresh water.
Going back to China for a minute, we should mention that at the Rice Research Institute in Huangzhou, they're working on ways of improving rice yields using less water.
By yields, you mean the amount they can grow?
Yes, they're trying to find ways to get more rice from less land, improve the taste, but also have other things in it besides carbohydrates so that it's healthier, better for you.
Good idea, considering it's the staple food.
And then you've got Japan, which is totally self-sufficient when it comes to rice. This is basically because they have a high tariff on imported rice, so everyone buys the homegrown product, and they don't export much.
Yes, but, even though rice is a kind of sacred crop there, consumption is only half what it was in the 1960s. This trend isn't evident in Thailand or China.
Interesting that you mentioned how rice is almost sacred in Japan, because I believe in Thailand it also plays an important cultural role.
Absolutely. They have the royal ploughing ceremony every year, which the king always attends, and he actually scatters a new stock of seed to the farmers, who pour into Bangkok for the event.
What about the global interest in organic farming? Is there such a thing as organically grown rice?
Yes, indeed. And the Japanese are getting quite a taste for it, apparently. There's an experimental farm near the city of Akita in the Japanese rice belt, famous for its sake, by the way, which has pioneered organic rice production, and now it's sold all across the country. It's a bit like the recent popularity of jasmine rice in Thailand, but that's for the export market, of course.
Part 4,
Interesting
you
how
will hear a
attitudes
lecture
change, isn't
about the situation of wild animals, especially wild boar. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. My name's Jim Robinson, and today we're going to look at the control of wild animals, specifically wild boar. Now, boar have been natural inhabitants of Western Europe for thousands of years, but in recent years there has been a surge in boar activity that poses real threat. Boars are not currently on the protected animals list, which is perhaps why there has been a spike in their breeding activity. Boars are an indigenous species and are particularly plentiful in rural France and the Bavarian uplands of Germany. Boar hunting is a European tradition that goes back to Roman times and became particularly popular among courtiers during the Middle Ages. Even during the 20th century, boar hunting was seen as an integral part of rural life. The decline in boar hunting has obviously led to a rise in the boar populations of Europe, and the situation has reached a critical point, with boar posing a critical threat to the environment. Proponents of boar hunting cite this factor as a major reason why boar populations should be contained. Boar also pose a threat to humans too, with countless reports of people being injured during boar attacks. The origins of the wild boar have roots in Germanic, and this perhaps explains their prevalence in Germany. The problems with the boar population. Germany have ramifications for the rest of Europe as boar packs migrate towards Central and Eastern Europe. One of the main issues that is of great concern is the transmission of diseases that infect other species. Dairy farmers in France are particularly concerned, as many of them have seen their herds depleted by infections. The methods for containing boar populations have been looked at in great detail, and numerous options are available. One is to encourage more boar hunting in wild regions such as mountains and forests. Hunters would be given licenses to hunt either for food or sport. Of course, boar do pose a threat to human life, so this possibility must be looked at with caution. One method that must be ruled out is poison, as legislation has been introduced prohibiting this. Such methods were tried with rabbits in the 1960s, and this had a disastrous impact on the food chain. the introduction of natural predators into the ecosystem is also an option that can't be considered. The only known predators of boar in the world are wild cats like lions and tigers. Obviously, there's no way such animals can be allowed to roam the mountains and forests of Europe. Given the threat that boars pose to humans, it is imperative that forest-dwelling boar are kept well away from people and cities. This is absolutely essential, as human safety must be the main priority of policymakers. By the 11th century, boars in several European countries were becoming increasingly rare. In Great Britain, controls attempted to reintroduce boars in the New Forest area of the country. Yet the entire population was almost wiped out during the battles of the English Civil War, when roaming soldiers hunted them for food. During the 1980s, wild boar rearing was encouraged and boar populations began to rise again. By the 1990s, there was a huge rise in the number of boar across England. Due in large part to the species no longer forced to live in captivity, many boar have broken free from farms across England and are breeding at a rapid rate. Aside from their environmental threat, boars also pose a problem for farmers growing crops and vegetables. Other species, such as red deer, are a threat to farm produce like grain and potatoes, but boars certainly present the most serious risk. The damage done to the farming industry is estimated to cost millions of pounds, and insurance payments as a result of this have spiked in the last decade. Red deer are predominantly confined to forest areas, and it is unusual to see them outside their habitats during the summer months. However, as the weather gets colder, they can be seen looking for food around local villages and fields. Red deer have their origins in Asia and are ruminant species, which means they have a stomach that consists of 4 compartments, much like cows. They are slaughtered for food, and their meat is sold as venison and is increasingly popular among consumers. There are 9 subspecies of red deer, with 3 of them on the endangered species list. The deer population doesn't pose the same threat as the boar population, but it certainly needs to be addressed. Forest areas are their main habitats, and they are now breeding at a much higher rate than in previous years. Of course, deer are an important part of the food chain and are an important part of the hunting traditions of the UK, so it is important that their population is kept stable for this reason. Though the real concern is the problems that deer present for farmers who have seen their crops suffer in devastating ways. Protection needs to be offered, and many farmers report building large perimeter fences around their fields to keep deer out, which costs them a huge amount of money. Government funding is so far inadequate to offer the protection farmers need, but ways are being looked at to provide subsidies through other means.
That's the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers.